Oh, hi. It's Joe here. You've caught me recording a little bit of extra for the podcast. Basically, just going to drop this in at the beginning just to let you know that this podcast we're discussing No More Heroes by the Stranglers. As a result of that, there is this direct discussion about underage sexual abuse and some... I don't know how... I feel like I want to say light racist language, outdated racist language. So if that's the sort of thing that you don't want to hear, then feel free to give this one a miss. But otherwise, please enjoy.
Taste Funny.
Hello, and welcome to episode 13
Ooh.
of the Taste Funny podcast. Unlucky for some.
Lucky for me, though.
It's your birthday, isn't it?
It's my birthday.
13th of every month.
Yep.
Um,
That's it. Presents, please.
yeah. This is a podcast in which myself, Joe McLachlan,
And myself, Peter McHugh.
review a record from each other's collections.
Indeed.
There's probably not much of a... Have you got anything else to say?
Well, I mean, we wasted all our ramble on the other chat.
Yeah.
So I feel like we don't... This one's going to be blissfully short by comparison.
Thank Christ for
Probably not.
So yeah, so those of you
Probably
who
not.
listened to last fortnight's
Ooh.
podcast will know that we've just talked for loads of time.
Yeah, you shouldn't have
And-
been so gluttonous. You should have saved some of that
I
ramble.
know,
for
but I
this time.
forget. If I don't, I get really excited and I forget to say things, which doesn't sound like that's the case, does it? Thing is, though, I guarantee I'll listen back to that when I'm editing it
Yeah.
and go, "Oh, I forgot I was going to
I'm
mention
going to
that."
mention that thing.
I bet there'll be loads.
Yeah, I always do that, though.
Yeah, there'll be loads.
That's the thing. It always happens. So,
So we may as well just crack straight on then.
yeah, shall we?
Yeah, jingle. So,
Well, what am I listening to, Joe? What have I been listening to?
you've been listening to No More Heroes by the Stranglers.
Indeed, I have.
So that was an exciting recommend for me because I wasn't planning to give you it straight away.
No, it was on the spur of the moment.
Spur of the moment, but
Off the cuff.
but it's a fucking great album, and I haven't listened to it for years, so I'll be interested to see what you thought of it.
Well, here we flipping go, friendo.
Right.
So, just in case anybody's not already initiated, the Stranglers were an English
Which you weren't.
punk and new wave band. I was, to an extent.
You really weren't,
of
though, were you? I would have
two
said
songs.
because this is so when you. I can't remember if this was in on or off pod, but when I gave you this record,
Yeah.
you said, "Oh, this is an Oi record."
No, it's not an oi, but it's old punk. That is correct. It's a punk rock album. It's
Yeah.
a new wave album, but it's the beginning of new wave.
The
so
dirty
it's-
end.
Yeah, the end that was still crawling its way out of punk.
Yeah.
So there's oi influence on this album. There's no doubt about it throughout. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's definitely not artsy punk. It's very brash and in
You not
your
say
face.
artsy punk? Because for someone who doesn't like solos, i.e. me, there's a lot of that going on here.
Yeah, but they're not wanky solos. They're little keyboardy jingly. Anyway,
Anyway,
we are getting ahead of
I'm
ourselves.
doing the thing where I talk loads.
Yeah,
You talk now.
Isn't that the podcast?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Okay, so I mean, we'll start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start. The first song on this album.
Is this going to be the thing where you just go through and systematically slag it all off?
Yeah, no. The first song on this album is called "I Feel Like a Wog," which is.
Is that the first song on the album? Fucking hell. Is it really?
It is the
I forgot that
first-
was the first
I
track.
mean, okay,
Christ
let me put
alive.
it this way. It's the first song on the YouTube playlist of the full album because I found it really difficult to get hold of this album without buying it, which
You're
I
on
don't really
Spotify?
want to do. I am, but I don't like Spotify because it doesn't always play in the correct order and it doesn't always play
All right.
without... And I hate adverts. Anyway, point is, I Feel Like a Wog is the first song. So I initially panicked because I was like, oh, what the fuck is this? Okay, and the answer is that it's an offensive racial slur that's no longer in common parlance. And that's not a problem, really, because the song is sung as a sort of anti-racist thing, and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be from the first-person perspective of a minority living in England. However, it is being sung by a white guy, which kind of, you know... And then there's the repeated use of the word wog, which is... Do you know what I found out while I was researching around wog in general? Because I know what it's from. I know it comes from Gollywog and the dolls and blah, blah, blah. But...
Not the toy dolls.
No, not the toy dolls, just the dolls that were Gollywog. Fuck, I'm going to stop saying it because it's annoying me. But in Australia, if you had an illness, you might refer to it as having a bit of a wog.
Oh, really? Oh, God.
It's also used for racial minorities over there, but it's also used for... They have a few different uses for the term wog.
No.
But one of them is,
Well,
if you had a slight and annoying illness.
No,
a bit
one
wog.
of the comedian Richard Herring tells a story about when he was at at university and was told off for using the phrase for somebody having nicked something of his, and he referred to them as having wogged it, and he hadn't realised, like he hadn't made the connection that's
a racist.
That's what that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's not a pleasant expression.
No, definitely.
But
not.
it's one of those, the whole, because if I remember rightly, the whole point of that song is very much the sort of talking about how not okay it is for anybody to be treated in that way.
Yeah, it's more like he's just speaking from a perspective that he doesn't have, but with the best intentions, is how I feel about the lyrics. Like, I don't like it. In fact, it actually kind of bothers me. But apart from that,
I think in the time again, it's one of those where the timeliness of the
obviously, like, because
it was probably we're talking about the time when these bands were trying to be offensive as well.
But it's also way more acceptable then to use that terminology, and the fact that he was trying to make a point about, it's an anti-racism song. It's not pro bigotry.
It's certainly, of the things that bother me on this album and make me feel uncomfortable, this is not even in the top 3.
Oh, hell no! Oh, we're getting to that shit right now. Yeah,
there's a lot to unpack here, Hugh Cornwell.
This is a fucking mess. So, yeah, initially I was a bit panicked by all that stuff, but I really love this song. It's got really nice organy stuff, and MVP for the entire album, hands down, the bassist. The bassist kills this album. He owns this album. He makes this album his little bitch.
Jean-Jacques Burnel.
He's just
my
back there.
My A-level music teacher, just reference back to the previous podcast, looks exactly like Jean-Jacques Burnel.
No
really, really specific. Really looks like him.
There you go.
He might not look like him now, but he did at the time.
But so it really bass-led album, really. Because the drumming's fine. Like, obviously, the cornerstone of any rhythm section, you've got your drum and your bassist. And more often than not, it's fair to say that the drummer is the one carrying the brunt of or making that concreteness that holds the rhythm section together. I would disagree here. I'd say definitely the bass. The drums are fine, but they're just standard punk drums. It's just sort of...
Yeah. Well, I think because I would say with this more so than any... There's a lot of punk bands, you talk about the Clash, the Sex Pistols, the ones that people really fucking remember, couldn't play the fucking notes.
No.
Like Paul Simonon, who's a great bass player, to be fair, but when he first started playing with the Clash, had the notes painted on the neck of his bass, so he'd remember where they were. Like, for that, I would say the keyboards, the guitar and the bass are all really virtuoso players on this album, more so than with most punk bands that people remember from the time.
Absolutely, I would agree. I'd say the guitar takes a backseat to the other two, though.
Yeah, and it's weird, isn't it? Because because neither of the songs that people, because obviously No More Heroes is the one that turns up on compilations. That's the famous punk song. But then the two that you would hear on the radio would be Peaches and Golden Brown, which I can only hear as Gordon Brown these days.
Gordon Brown, texture like sun.
And he does. Gordon Brown really does have the texture like sun. Yeah, I don't know, but
oh no, you've ruined Golden Brown. Sure.
But those are the two songs. Those are the two songs that people know the Stranglers for, probably more so than any other two, including No More Heroes. But obviously neither of those are on this album.
But No More Heroes is the one that I know them from. Golden Brown I would have heard, but I didn't even know it was
You wouldn't have known it was the Stranglers.
Whereas I knew this was the Stranglers, and this is always how I thought of the Stranglers, is No More Heroes, because it reminds me of being in the backseat of my mum's car. Because this is what would be on. It would be like punk compilations, and it would be No More Heroes, and she'd be going, "Do you want a chocolate raisin?" And I'd be going, "Yes, Mum, I do." And
there you go. I feel bad that
I was having some proper little nostalgia times with this album, especially whenever No More Heroes came on. I was like, It was good. But let's get back to the misery that is the rest of the album. So, Bitching, track 2. And I've got a little quote here, and we've already picked up on this. "I'll tell you what, we'll meet in Amsterdam, and then you'll see what should be really can." It's true. Amsterdam's the land of dreams.
Yeah.
Prostitutes, marijuana, anything you want.
Those are the two things.
Those are the two things that make
Canals.
it the land of dreams. Canals, yeah.
If you like...
Pancakes, really
If
good
you
pancakes.
like houseboats, marijuana and prostitutes...
Do you know what I do? Like all of those things. No, that's not the point. The point is that this song is. Okay, here's something I was going to say before, and
It's got a real groove to this. I love the
whole album. The whole album has a real good groove, but that's why the bassist is so important. What I will say is the first song as well. One of the things that sets them apart, and eventually they move into new wave and they do this other weird stuff, and then they do more poppy stuff towards the end of their career and whatever. But they're not punk; they're punk rock. And the rock part is really evident on songs like Bitching and on less on the first one. The first song's got that more of that punky vibe to it, but Bitching, they've slowed it down, they've pulled it back. There's little elements of stuff like The Who in there.
Yeah.
You know, these more rock influences. And the organ, the ever-present Hammond organ, just jiving away. It's too much.
Yeah,
it's too good. So the organ stabs are in full force on Bitching, and it's got this really classic rock vibe mixed with the punk. There's a really nice little keyboard solo in it as well, which is really good. You know, it can't be a bit of a keyboard solo. And the whole bar bitchin' refrain.
Telling you the gospel truth.
Bar bitchin'. Yeah.
Why don't you all go get screwed?
Yeah.
To be fair, because again, I'll bring this up. I'm sure you'll bring it up at some point, but Hugh Cornwell's voice is the most fucking disgusting, dirty sounding voice in
He has
punk.
a very dirty punk.
And because he's not in the Stranglers now. The Stranglers still tour. It's about 30 quid a ticket every time they tour. And I look at it and I go, not without Hugh Cornwell.
Yeah.
These are one of those weird bands where
he made it. He made the thing.
Well, I don't even know if that's entirely fair. But do you have those bands where you've got records that you've listened to one record and you've never looked any further?
Yeah.
I've never listened to any other Stranglers albums, and I don't know why. Because I fucking love this album.
Yeah.
There's something really wonderful about how dirty and horrible it is.
Yes.
And how uncomfortable the whole thing is. And I love it to pieces, but for some reason I've just never thought to look any further. And I've got loads of bands like that where I've gone, that is a great album, that'll do. I don't know if there's any do you have that at all, ever?
Yeah, probably. I'm struggling to think of an example off the top of my head, but probably, yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean, yeah. In fact, definitely. But I usually do explore past one album, right?
You find it easier to fall into a hole than I do as well.
Yeah, I will
really
fall really deep in. Especially because if I find something that grabs my attention for long enough for me to consider buying it and then putting it in my record collection, then chances are I'm also then going to start exploring the rest of the back catalogue.
For a while, Chumbawamba were like that. For a while, ABCDEFG was the only album I felt I needed. Yeah. And I've more recently enjoyed a lot of their stuff. But I'm really glad that I did as well.
The boy bands.
Boy Bands of One is great.
Maybe my favourite.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. Just felt it'd been a while since we mentioned them. Sorry.
It has been a while since we mentioned Chumbawamba. But Dead Ringer is the next track. It starts with this really gnarly, distorted bass hook, which at this point is becoming a staple for this album. These groovy bass lines that are just really big and in your face. The vocals were a bit of a surprise in the chorus, with the chorus flangey effects on them. I wasn't really expecting that, because that's something that I always sort of, when I think of who started doing that, well, David Bowie and Killing Joke and people like that were doing that. But I wasn't expecting it after the first couple of tracks that they'd be like, just stick a load of effects on the vocals and have them sound really bizarre. And they did, and they do it again later on, but I never saw that coming. And at the end of the track, there's this, he does like a growl.
Is Dead Ringer, which is Dead Ringer? Is that the one?
Hey, you're a dead ringer.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, basically, it's a song.
Conqueror stringer, wasn't it you? Yeah,
who is proud of being poor? Yeah, he does a lot of that.
That was lovely.
Oh, thank you. Really he does this sort of almost like a growled sound, almost like pre-death metal vocal style. And really catchy sing-along chorus with the, hey, you're a dead ringer. All that stuff. Great. And lyrically, it's a call out of blatant rip-offs and scene kids. They're talking about scene kids. It's 70s scene kids. They're like, hey, when you're the one walking around bragging about being poor, but now it's nearly the end of the 70s and you're gearing up for the 80s with your cocaine in your white suit on. Do you know what I mean? That's the feeling I got from that, and I could be very wrong. But let us move on to my first Love-Hearted track, and probably what will get some sort of clippage, so we might as well go for it now. It's Dagenham Dave.
They was from out of town. Manchester's like it too. Had ripped the softer marks. More red than me and you. Scaffolding pays the bread. It pays for drugs and kicks. They've only had one love. Had no real need for jakes. They must have far ahead. But now it's dead.
Just off the top, before we get properly into Dagenham Dave. Dagenham Dave is also naval slang for someone who is somewhat unstable, crazy. Dagenham being close to barking mad, apparently. And that was found on the Wikipedia article for the Morrissey song of the same name.
Oh, right, okay.
So Morrissey also
not familiar with that song.
Dagenham Dave.
I was thinking about this the other day because
Yep.
obviously I'm a big Smiths fan. Or difficult to sort of really get myself around that now. Now that he's a big racist. But
is he?
oh, have you not heard any of this?
Is Morrissey a massive twat?
Oh, mate.
I
I
mean,
mean, he was
no,
always
he
a
was always a
twat,
massive
but
twat,
it was
yeah.
only, it was a different kind of twat. No, he's always a difficult arsehole, but now he's come out in support of like loads of fascist groups and stuff. And so for Christmas, my mum got me a record of Enid Blyton
Yeah.
reading some of the Noddy stories.
Yeah.
And I said to her at the time, I was like, "Oh, this is probably the best record I own by a racist." And then I remembered that I have the entire Smiths discography. So, yeah,
Oh,
sorry,
there
as you
you
were.
go.
Sorry, carry on about
Yeah,
it.
so I haven't really written or talked much, or I'm not about to talk much about the musical timbre of this track. It basically follows the same stuff that's been set up in the first 3 tracks, which is it's groovy, bass-led punk rock, and it's very, 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 very good at what it do. This song is about a smart, well-read drug addict killing himself in the Thames. It makes mention of sort of the city sickness and something, which is something I can definitely identify with after my brief but very upsetting time living in Manchester. It just has this, not all of it reads like poetry, but the last verse he just sort of speaks it, he doesn't really sing it, and it was like, it was so weird. I love it, and I have it written down, and I'm going to do it. So, late night, a street in the west end of the city, there was a place there where he lost himself. Strange feelings did he feel there, strange people did he meet there, angry sounds did he hear there, like the howling of bulls. That's so good.
It is good.
It's just lovely lyricism. It's probably my favourite song on the album. And then we got to the next one. Bring on the Nubiles.
I love this song. I love this song.
I also love this song. I hate its lyrics.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
It's disgusting.
Have you seen pictures of
so
Hugh Cornwell, by the way?
Foul.
Have you looked at pictures
I
of him?
have seen pictures of the band, but
Because
I
he
wouldn't be able to
looks
tell
like
you.
a sex criminal.
He
They all do, in fairness, especially
I
at the
mean,
time this album
I
came
can
out.
believe it, because there's a few things on this album that make me go.
But it's interesting though, isn't it? Because they're definitely. Sorry, I'll let you talk a bit more about the song first, and then
Yeah.
we'll come back to that.
So in stark contrast to the last song, where the lyrics were lovely, these are about as base as they get. Right? It's literally a song about fucking small girls, and this is one of the ones that I had it made me really think, and that's weird, right? Because it's so base. It's so. I mean, the basic premise of the most sort of repeated lyric apart from "Bring on the Nubiles" is let me fuck you, let me fuck you. Right? It's ridiculous.
Is this the one that's got the line about "I want to lick your little puss and nail it to the floor"?
Yes. it
See,
is.
for a long time I didn't really get that he was talking about sex. I literally just thought he wanted to nail
a pussy to the floor.
literally and I have a very graphic image in my head of how precisely that would work, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to share it
I mean,
with you.
what about the dripping tap part and the? Never mind.
It's really, this is the thing, right? So because it's a really uncomfortable thing to listen to.
Oh, it's horrible.
But see,
I find this is uncomfortable to me in the same way that "Talk to the Hand" is uncomfortable.
but
by,
see, they're totally different for me. It's Shrag.
Shrag, thank you.
But they're totally different. See, I would refer in this. So, for me, this song was always and the perspective they're always taking on, because there's quite a lot of really horrible, unpleasant sexual lyrics in this album.
Yep.
But I've always taken that to be them looking at the dirtiness of power, and the one about the, I can't remember, is it called what, the one about the head teacher watching the.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Later.
But that one, they're looking at the abuse of power. They're looking at like in this one, they're looking at sort of dirty old men perving over little girls, and they're it kind of makes me think of. Have you ever read or listened to or seen Alan Bennett's Talking Heads?
Yeah.
Have you seen the one with the paedophile?
No.
There's a really horrible one where it's basically this guy who's already. I think he, it's very well established that you eventually learn that he's a child. He's a paedophile. He's attracted to children, and then it ends with him this kind of really horrible, he attacks a child.
Yeah.
Essentially, he attacks a child, and he justifies it to himself. And obviously, I don't know anything about Alan Bennett. I fucking love Alan Bennett's work. The History Boys is my absolute favourite film. I've probably mentioned that before. And that's got notes of sort of paedophilia and abuse of power in there as well. But it's in the same way that it's criticising, but it's criticism by getting into the head of the people that they are criticising.
See, I don't know that this is. I feel like he likes it. Anyway.
I think it's really.
It's neither here nor there. And I mean,
I don't know if it is neither here or there. I think it's quite important.
No, because this song isn't necessarily about. I mean, you've gone to the paedophile place, and that's the right place to go later in the album. 100%, the paedophile place is right later on.
I think that's probably why I've gone to it with this one already.
But here, he could just be talking about flat-chested girls, and nubile girls just means small, petite.
I think we know he's not
talking about.
I think we know he isn't.
I don't think we know he isn't. I think you're judging him too quickly.
What? All right. So by track 5, I'm judging him too quickly. If we get to track 7, then it's okay.
Well, no, but I feel like this could be about completely. Look, the point is, it doesn't necessarily have to be about kids. This song, and I feel like the way they went so graphically into the sex parts, I really hope it's not about kids, because I really enjoy the fucking song.
But this is the thing. I would argue that it gives. I think you're not giving them enough credit. I think they. I think they're trying to create something that's really uncomfortable to listen to and really
100%.
unpleasant,
Yeah.
because they're at the point. We're at the point where
out.
these are bands who are trying to push boundaries, and arguably, like the Sex Pistols and the Clash are slagging off the Police and they're slagging off the Queen. Yeah. These guys are getting into the real dirt, like they're like the underground, like the real dirt of society.
They deal with the nasty,
there's
bits.
People, but again, it's still dealing with like dirt in power, but it's just dealing with dirt in power in a totally different way.
Okay.
And I think that's where I would go with this album. That they're talking about how disgusting these people are by getting inside their heads.
Well,
I'm not saying that there's none of that in there, but that's where I got from it anyway. It's a great chorus though, really catchy.
Very catchy. Weirdly though, this is not what it was making me think about, Joe. This entire tangent, not what I was about to say. Here we go. Here's what I was going to say. You ever hear like an old person, a baby boomer style old person, go, "These rap lyrics are disgusting"? Do you ever hear that? And then you're just like, I'm just going to put the Stranglers on. I'm
going to put it out there. I reckon those people aren't people who were fans of the Stranglers anyway.
Yeah, probably not. So even though I'm mostly turned off by the lyrics, this song is so very, very catchy. It has this really dirty, sleazy bass line, which is so appropriate. And it just keeps me hooked all the way through, even though the whole time I'm just going, ugh, this is horrible.
Do you have that, just out of interest?
Yeah.
So we've talked before about you have some bands that you really like with quite far right-leaning lyrics.
Yeah.
Do you have that same feeling listening to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. I always feel guilty listening to Nails. Always. And I really like them. But I catch little bits of the lyrics and I'm just like, there's no way you can misconstrue that shit.
Yeah.
And then I feel kind of bad. It's like it makes me not want to be a fan of the band, but I'm trying to divorce ideology from art more when I listen to stuff, and because I feel like it's not always like I don't know. Yeah,
it's hard though, isn't it? It's such a big conversation because where do you I feel like with music I find it really difficult.
Like I feel like if Nails pretty much wrote an album that was like, I hope all the black people go home, and if they don't, I'm going to stomp on their face with spiky boots, I'd be like, all right, I'm out. But that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is writing sort of songs that are anti-Islamist and are generally supposed to be a reaction to the current climate of terror and the many sort of weird things that are going on in America. Although I'll be interested to see what their next album looks like, and I really, really, really hope it's pro-Mexico. And they're just fucking Trump.
Does it feel like it's going to be pro-Mexico?
Yeah.
I find it would. I imagine for me anyway, I would find it really difficult with music. I don't know so much with like
nothing they ever say is overtly racist, which means in my head I can kind of
you kind of get away with it. I can
kind of go, okay, this is fine, but I know, or at least I have theorized just from what I know about the band and the way they conduct themselves musically, the sort of things they're trying to poke a stick at.
Yeah.
I just get I'm just like, you're probably right leaning. I wouldn't say they're far right leaning. It's not Screwdriver. I'm not listening to like out Nazi punk because that's wrong and I don't like it. They're a hardcore band, and hardcore's always been a bit sort of on the knife edge, where it's like it's always about supposed to be about positivity and sticking together, but at the same time, if you're not in the hardcore scene, you're on the outside of the hardcore scene, and you're not sticking together with anybody from the hardcore scene. Get away from us, we're angry.
That sounds really cunty.
It is really cunty. It's why I can never really. I don't get I just don't get hardcore. So let's get on to the next track, which is "Stick My Fingers Up Your Nose. It's Something Better Change." That's a lyric from the song, by the way.
Okay, I was just thinking, I don't recognise the title of this song.
The song is Something Better Change, but there is a line in there which is "Stick my fingers up your nose," which I really enjoyed just because it was very weird.
It's very punk.
It's very punk. So it's more really tight organs and bass interplay.
Sorry.
Tight organs. Didn't say that when I was writing it. Beck. Really tight organ and bass interplay. The lyrics are quite repetitive, but and maybe a little bit of irony there on a song called Something Better Change.
Yeah. It's a bit where at the end he's just going, change!
The track bumps along with some instrumental flourishes, but doesn't really rev my engine all that much. It's just a sort of non on the album, unfortunately. Yeah. And then we get to No More Heroes Anymore, which brings back vivid memories of the back seat of my mum and dad's car. It just really does, because like I say, when I think of like this song, it's like I was always listening to it from the backseat of my mum's car, just like
it's a fucking absolute belter.
Probably followed by like X-Ray Specs or something, you know. Yeah. So it's a happy punk time with my mum. The keyboard part on this song is just friggin' infectious, and this grumbly bass guitar, and the drums, all this rock solid rhythm work. And then there's this final like wailing guitar on the outro, which is just, it's so good. If you've never heard this song before, are you under a rock? Come out from under the rock. Go listen to No More Heroes by the Stranglers. It's
Patrick from SpongeBob.
Yeah, Jesus, Patrick from SpongeBob. Fucking Jesus.
He died recently, didn't he? The bloke from SpongeBob.
Don't fucking tell me that shit. Oh yeah, they created
Stephen Hillenburg. Yeah, not Patrick from SpongeBob. He's a cartoon, Peter.
Yes.
That'd be weird if they killed him off. But it's not the sort of cartoon where that would happen.
It's just a major nostalgia trip, and it's my favourite Stranglers song.
Probably of all the
Golden Brown
of all the stuff we've discussed, this has probably got to be the most
old schooly.
Well, it's got to be the most sort of recognisable track of anything that either of us has provided the other with so far.
Peasant in the Big Shitty.
Love this song. Fully
not prepared for these opening lyrics. The day is sticky and yellow. The night was so untight. The cows go moo, moo, moo. Is everything all right?
Yeah. And it's
what?
This
what
was the first.
Fuck is that?
This was the first sort of. I'm going to say it's a pop song. I know it's not technically, but like this is the first pop song I ever heard that wasn't in like a sort of standard timing as well.
Yeah. What time is it in?
This is in da 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 da.
It has a really interesting groove.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2. I think it's 9.
9.
I think it's. I'm going to say 9/8. I might be wrong about that.
It has a really interesting groove to it. I'll give it that. It was very. But I'm not as good at that as that.
But surely though, presumably you must have noticed that it doesn't. It's not.
But I listen to so much prog and math.
True.
And like crazy metal with crazy time signatures and crazy music with crazy time signatures that I was just like,
this doesn't register.
Pretty basic bitch as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, that's true. Unusual for the style that it's in. But
unusual for the time, unusual for the style. Definitely. But
yeah.
So I know I mentioned it's the first thing I mentioned is that the groove is really weird and off kilter. And of course the single best line on the album, "There be strange garlic here," right?
Yep. Weird, take that, fucking Future of the Left.
Yeah. Weird House of Horror vocal, like really, almost like they were trying to ape early goth rock, which would have been sort of.
But then this would have been around the same time anyway.
Spooling up around that time, yeah. More in the 80s, really, but more prominent in the 80s, definitely. But it would have been spooling up. But then they did. They aped it more than once. It wasn't the first time they've done this, or the last time apparently. So they do that. The groove is, like I say, really weird and off kilter, as we've just found out. It's in 9/8 because Joe's very good at tapping out grooves like that.
Not confident about that. Just as a little retraction. Something. Oh, we've got a retraction.
Ooh.
Retraction.
In the Run the Jewels episode, I said something was 6/8. It's not
4/4.
It's like 4/4. Yeah. It's just because I think it's just the way they the beats are in, the rhymes are in triplets, and then they just settle. So it was just me being thick. So anyway, end of retraction. Back to the episode.
The chorus then comes out of nowhere and it's this really clean, really weirdly clean sound, and it's so chalk and cheese to the verse parts. It's really well done. I enjoyed that a lot. And it just doesn't sound like it belongs with the rest of the record, let alone the song. And the song finishes off with a nice bit of keyboard flapping.
As always.
As
There's
always.
a lovely bit of keyboard flapping.
A nice bit of keyboard flapping. Burning up time. It's time to burn up. It's burning up time. Some more traditional punk vibes here.
I don't know if it's burning up time. I think it's burning up time.
Burning up time.
I feel like that's a quite key distinction.
Yeah, I feel like I've inserted some extra.
Burning up time, because he's burning up time.
That's a Yob song.
No,
What did you do? I burned up time itself, and I sunk into the esoteric void.
The eyes reached into my grave, and they held my heart, and my heart was open and full of dust.
I mean,
Do you tell me that's not the exact sort of stuff?
you
I'm not even divorced.
You should listen to the new record. He nearly died before he wrote the new record. So he was in hospital for quite a while, and then he came out, and he woke up during surgery, had some lucid visions, and then wrote an album about it. So
Exactly. I'm not even fucking slightly surprised by that.
that shit is pretty intense.
Not even close to surprised.
Right, some more traditional punk vibes, but still with plenty of lovely synthy goodness, because it's everywhere, all over this album. It's easy to listen to, it's easy to sing along to, and features another fantastic little keyboardy solo. And the song is mostly about angstiness and wanting to go out and tear shit up and just, get out there and blah, blah, blah. And then, at the end of the song, there's a section where he abducts a small girl by offering her sweets. And my fucking heart sank. I was just like, oh no. No.
To my knowledge, he's never been accused or convicted of anything, so...
Just fucking wow. Just when you were like settle, you're like, oh well, I'm glad that weird creepy song's over, and we're past the part about nubiles and people killing themselves. I wonder what... Oh my god! No!
Oh, Hugh.
Oh, Hugh, you sick child stealer.
I still maintain it's... Anyway.
It's art. It's just art. Relax.
It's just art.
It's Gilbert and George. They got all those young boys in there bending over with their arseholes out because they liked to do art.
What? With Gilbert and George? I didn't know that.
So Gilbert... first of all, I'd say prominently that I fucking love Gilbert and George. I really like their artwork. And
I feel like you need to be careful about how much you're just about to say about how much you love their work before you tell me what they've done.
No, I'm gonna. Don't worry. I really love their work. I think they are some of the best photograph artists that ever were.
No, I also have. I liked their stuff. I feel like I'm about to change that opinion.
Well, if you look at a lot of their earlier stuff, you'll notice that aside from Gilbert and George themselves, and this didn't change as they got older, so it gets weirder the older they are.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they always have young, sort of, probably just 18-year-old models.
As long as
and
they are 18, that's fine.
They're always butt naked, and they're always in some pretty revealing poses. And it just gets weirder the older Gilbert and George get, because the models stay the same age, and Gilbert and George just slowly become these lechy old men. It's just like,
Do you know what? No, I'll accept it as long as they are of legal consenting age.
Oh
that's
God,
fine.
no! I'm not for a second insinuating that
Fucking
Gilbert
hell,
and George fecked children. No. I love Gilbert and George. God damn, those guys are good.
Are you familiar with Robert Mapplethorpe?
I'm not.
Well, he's got an amazing photo of that. I really want a massive copy of, which is him with a bullwhip up his arse.
Oh, I am entirely. Yes, no, I know this one. Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that photograph. Mainly because me and my friend Josh, friend of the podcast, hi Josh, we
may have even spoken about this on pod before.
Oh Christ, I probably have.
You're repeating yourself.
But I definitely haven't spoken about the fact that we went to the Kiasma Gallery in Helsinki, and we were discussing the fact that and how we would really struggle to take that photograph without. Like, he either had someone to do it for him, or he pressed it on a timer, then waddled up with the bullwhip up his arse up to the thing to pose. And I said at the time, I was like, I don't know if I have any... I really don't know if I have any friends that I could ring up and ask to take that picture for me. And he said, I would do that for you, Joe. I remember thinking then, I've really found a kinship here.
Yes, yeah.
But what I'm saying, Pete, is up your game.
Do that. And take a weird picture of you and a bottle up your ass. Why not?
I'm gonna make that the new profile picture for the podcast.
That's a weekend, isn't it?
That's a picture of me with a bullwhip up my arse. That's what I'm gonna draw.
Right. Enough bizarre artwork and child molesting.
Yeah.
English towns, the dogs, they try to possess us. Second best line on the album. A somewhat slower track, but it has a nice guitar and keyboard solo section in it, which I was a big fan of. I'm not getting much out of it, other than the lyrics. Just sort of a slightly depressed, tripped out life view of England, which, considering how much drugs we know the Stranglers did, including a lot of heroin.
Yeah.
Seems about right. But you mostly got to gloss over that because that's got no child molestation in it. Moving on.
Yeah. And it's
School
not about child molestation and is thus of no interest to us.
yeah.
On the Taste Funny podcast.
At this point in the album, fucking tame. Moving on.
Yeah.
Schoolma'am.
This is unpleasant.
Okay, so the opening of this track's really good. I loved the heavily affected guitar and keyboards, this sort of noisy, discordant wall coming at you. It was really, really enjoyable. That was good. The perfect harmony of this 7.5-minute track, which mainly seems to be, and I'm going to try and read this verbatim, because I thought I worded it quite well. Piss, I've lost my notes.
Yeah, you're right. That was really well worded, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautifully done.
So, a 7.5-minute track about a teacher banging a student while the female principal watches on CCTV and masturbates herself to death.
Yes. I don't see what's wrong with that. That sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Honestly,
I mean, obviously you went to private school. I went to...
Honestly.
That sort of shit maybe didn't happen there. But where I was at school, that sort of shit was rampant.
Weirdly, I never came across it.
No.
Honestly, after the intro, musically, the song's sort of, again, much of a muchness to the rest of the album. If I've mentioned it once, I've mentioned it 1,000 times. The keyboards were nice, the bass was really good, everything else was nice and glued together, but it wasn't jumping out at me. It's fine. It's mostly just the content of this song that I find very weird and upsetting. This, especially because they thought, you know what, if we're going to talk about a man banging someone who is just of legal consenting age, and they do the whole maths bit at the end where they're like, that's 16 and 16's okay, and then like the whole thing about the fact that you've got this third layer of this person watching voyeuristically and wishing that she was the young girl and masturbating so hard she fucking dies. Oh shit, what a way to end an album. Oh my lordy. Here's what I'll say for this album. I like it and hate it all at once. I want to like it, and musically it's very good. It's classic-y, punky stuff, and that tickles me in a good way. But the disgusting dirge that pours out of the lyrics is almost too much to handle at points.
But I wonder, because it's really hard, isn't it? Because like I would have thought, like, because I definitely find myself, when it comes to anything like this, I find myself really attracted to art that portrays sexual horribleness and anything to do with sex. I know that, like, I sound... Sorry, Mum. I'm aware of how weird this is, but like I find that stuff really interesting. Yeah. Have you ever seen Diary of a Teenage Girl?
No.
Watched that with my mother-in-law. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
Because that was when my wife was in hospital a while, like a year or so ago. My mother-in-law came to stay to help me look after the boy while they was in hospital, and we have quite similar tastes in films, weirdly. So we found ourselves watching this film called Secret. Is it just Diary of a Teenage Girl or Secret Diary of a Teenage Girl? It's a great film about a teenage girl who is based on the book by Phoebe Glockner, which is a great book, which I fully recommend as well. It's basically about a 15-year-old girl who's having an affair with her mum's boyfriend. And it's obviously an abusive relationship. She's 15. It's not in any way appropriate for her, and it's just about her sort of sexual awakening and how she's massively abused by all these people in her life. And I find that story really interesting because it's obviously a very different story to anything that I've sort of grown up with, and maybe that's one of the reasons I find it so interesting. And I think for the same reason this album really grips me, because I find myself going, all of this is really horrible, and his voice lends it so perfect.
Oh god, yeah.
His voice is the perfect. If you're going to have anyone singing about this stuff,
It should be him.
it's definitely Hugh Cornwell, and it's one of the reasons I really struggle with the idea of listening to the Stranglers post him, and maybe one of the reasons I've not bothered to look it up since. I don't know, but I certainly don't think, and maybe I need to do more reading into the Stranglers to make an informed decision about whether or not.
I should have probably done more reading.
But so, well, maybe we'll come back to it in the
we'll
next
talk about
pod.
the
Maybe we'll do it. But
here's the thing. I'm not, like I say, even though a lot of the lyrical content makes me just my skin crawl, I think I'll probably still listen to this album.
yeah,
I think I probably would still listen to this album. And I find a lot of the stuff that's happening musically to be. It's hard because it's not like it's blowing my mind,
yeah.
because it's not anything new. It's stuff that I've heard done by other bands, and punk rock is old now. It's an old man genre. It's
I was going to say it's a very
it's
old,
got its
because
bust
this album must be about 40 years old now.
yeah, it's getting there.
30, 40 years old.
So yeah, it's an old album, but for what it is and for what it was, it's an excellent example.
It's
of
not.
that.
It's not one that gets mentioned, is it? I
No,
don't think.
it's-
When you talk about
You talk about the big punk albums, it's definitely not. But then again, I think there's other albums that also don't get, like Dayglow Teens would be my sort of.
yeah.
If this was
It's an unsung hero.
if this was you going, this is the unsung hero of punk rock, I'd be there holding Dayglow Teens going, no, this is the unsung
To be
hero.
fair, I don't know the album.
Motherfucking
So
polystyrene, bitch.
see, I don't know much X-Ray Specs beyond
man.
what's on the thing. So, like what's on the all the compilations that everybody owns.
My
I have-
mind is like a plastic bag.
I bought a 3-disc punk compilation one time, and
Yeah.
I only ever listened to the first disc because the other two feature songs by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and obviously, I know I'm not a fan of them anyway.
Yeah.
They don't belong on a fucking.
Punk, no.
They don't belong following immediately after Sham 69.
Absolutely.
I
not.
really
That's upsetting.
strongly believe that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a strongly held belief.
Yeah, UK subs, Sham 69, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Californication.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'd love to hear that album. Red Hot Chili Peppers doing an album with UK subs. I'd enjoy that. The kids are united in a car. I live in a car in California. California.
Californication.
Californication. That's all the
Right,
Sham
that's it.
69 and UK sub songs I know,
Okay.
and all of the Red Hot Chili Peppers songs I know.
I think that'll work.
Scar Tissue.
It's like the split they did with Operation Ivy.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Did I mean Operation Ivy or do I mean Code Orange?
I've
Agent
no
Orange,
idea.
even. Agent Orange is who I'm
Orange.
thinking of.
I've
But
no
Agent Orange are a hardcore punk. It doesn't matter. I've got completely musically lost.
Unity. That's a
Unity.
That's Operation Ivy, isn't it? Unity.
No, I think you find that's Idols.
No, Unity is
Yeah,
a song
yeah,
by
yeah.
Operation Ivy.
Yeah. I know.
Anyway,
Moving on. I think we're done here.
yeah, we're
I
tired.
think this is over.
We're tired. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Oh no, hang on.
We've got to do recommendations.
Yeah, we'll do that in a bit. Jingle.
Hot cock.
Hot cock. That's a great recommendation. Thanks for that.
I don't know. I've stopped saying hot cock, but I used to say it quite a lot.
Never heard you say that.
I used to say something like a goddamn a hot cock.
Please don't get me started saying that because I really don't need that.
Oh, it's all right. I said my current one is shit the bed, which
Shit the bed I'm totally familiar with, but
Yeah.
hot cock is a totally different thing.
hot cock. So I think it's about time we talked about recommendations.
Probably.
for your listening for now. So, feck it. I know you've already heard an album by them, but I'm going to give you it anyway, and you'll just have to get my next nice one that I was going to give you this time. Next time, not next time, but the time after, because you've got to get an ugly one in the middle.
What
But
the fuck was that sentence?
it was a run-on, my friend.
That's the sentence that says we've been recording for nearly 2 hours without a break.
Yeah. Okay, so what you're going to get is Flying Microtonal Banana by King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. Wizard, piss eggs. Hot cock.
What's it called again?
Oh, we need a break. It's called Flying Microtonal Banana.
No. No.
What?
I'm not listening to that.
Why?
I'm not listening to an album called Flying Microtonal Banana.
You are?
Can I put it on in work?
Yep.
Is this a nice one?
Yep.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
This is a really nice one. You're going to love this.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You're going to love it more than you think you will. So,
Is it going to be as much hard work as
no.
as it sounds?
No, absolutely not.
Oh,
So,
fuck me.
King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard are a Australian lizard. I did say that right that time?
I don't remember now.
Australian psychedelic rock band.
I don't know which King. It's King.
It's Lizard
King
Wizard.
Wizard and the Gizzard Lizard.
Wizard.
King Lizard and the Wizard Gizzard.
Yep.
King Gizzard.
King Fizzard Wizard.
King. Yeah.
The Origami Lizard Wizard.
What's the song? There's a song
I
that's.
just want to give you my recommendation.
I know, I'm just getting confused. There's a song by a band that, like, the name of the song is two words that rhyme, and then the band name is also a word that rhymes.
Hocus Pocus Focus.
Hocus Pocus by Focus, that's it. I'm literally sitting here going, is it Helter Skelter by Delta? I don't think it is, because it's Hocus Pocus by Focus.
Is it Brown Town by Drown?
Yeah, it'll be Lindo Window by Bindo.
God damn it. Alright,
sorry, everyone, I'm really tired.
Enough. It's time for me to go home. I've got to be at work in the morning.
You could have said Tuesday was better.
Oh, fuck off. Tuesday wasn't bad. Anyway, it's
I wouldn't have written any notes.
King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard Flying Microtonal Banana. The album is the first of 5 that they released within the year of 2017. They are prolific little people. Australian psychedelic rockers.
What are you going to call them?
I don't know.
Monkeys?
Monkeys, yeah.
They're prolific little monkeys, so they are.
Oh, yes, they be.
Oh, yes, they're so prolific
yes,
little
they
monkeys.
do. Sometimes they do. But basically, this album is an intense and very enjoyable blend of garage rock and psychedelic rock, but with the unique bent on this particular album, as with all their albums, each album has its own little thing going on, of microtonal tuning. So basically the notes between the notes, added frets on the fretboard and all that stuff. And it's heavily inspired by Turkish psychedelic rock and stuff from that area of the world where they use very different scales.
King Lizard and the Belter Skizzard they're the ones with the special made guitars with all the weird frets and stuff.
Yeah. They built their own, or they had a friend of theirs build them a guitar, and that's the album is named after one of the guitars.
Right. Okay.
That's why it has such a very odd name.
Is that why?
Yeah.
Is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, is that also the name of a guitar?
No, that's the name of the band, Joe. Honestly, the point being, it's a fun-filled rock album. It should have you grooving and bouncing along, and never for a second should you be like, "Oh, that was a bit much," or "Jesus, did he just abduct a small child?" So, right. Anyway, the point is, go listen to that album. It's really good.
So, anything particular you'd like me to listen to from this album?
I'd say if we were for a little bit here, just for everyone at home, I think from this fantastic album, we're going to have a little snippet of Open Water.
Okay, great. Here's that then. Alright, thanks very much. I'll be listening to Bar Bye by Car. Thanks for that.
What's it? The Locust Pocust by Focus. That's the same joke. I would have done it. And in fact, it was the proper band, almost. I've forgotten which one's the real one.
Was it Horde Hocus, Pocus by Ford Focus?
It was Drainage by Strainage.
Oh, I could do this for a long
Yeah, I
time.
could do this all day. Absolutely all day.
Yeah, okay.
It's Ronnie Bonnie by Horny. Okay, moving on.
Boney Stoney by Coronary. Drinking Peroni.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Oh.
You fucking idiots. All 10 of you.
End it. Let it end.
Right, okay.
Taste Funny podcast was presented and devised by Peter McHugh and Joe McLachlan. Music was by The X Towels.